Now we're going to actually do some configuration. We've got our network diagram. I've already got a couple of routers open, so let's open those. This is R1 and this is R2. The first thing we see the command line here, and the default password to exit is admin admin. So let's type admin with a password of admin. And the same on R2, admin admin. To give our system a host name, what we will do, we'll say configure system name of R1 over here, and same on R2, configure system name R2. We got our system name. We could do it both ways. We could either type the whole line, or we could say configure and then enter, and then system, enter, and then we say name R1. So you have a hierarchical approach, or you have, if you know the full string, you could type the full string in. We could also see, if we type info here, what we've actually configured. These are the defaults here, and we see that the system name is R1. Or we could say configure system info. Maybe not like that. So configure system and then we say info. We've got the same here. I've noticed something here, that the time that we've got is UTC. I'm in the UK. Our time over here is GMT, so we'll probably look to change that. And the way I'm going to change it, if I Control Z, I go back to the start here, and if I do a show system time, I see that it's configured as UTC. I also see that the date is wrong. The date and the time is wrong. I will change those as well. Let's see what it's showing on R2. Show system time. This is more correct. The time is about 1 o'clock now. I'll change both of them. I'll make it both standards. First thing that I want to do is change the time zone. So I will go configure system time, I think it's zone. If you question mark, it gives you the completions. Yeah, I've got a zone, and I want to use GMT. And I'll just copy and paste this onto R1 as well. So highlight the string, paste it in, GM with a T on the end as well. Now if I do show system time, we see it's changed to GMT. Also on R2 the same, show system time, it's GMT. And I also want to change the actual time. Let's say it's, I haven't got a clock here, but let's say it's 1:15. So if I say go into admin mode, and then I say set time, and then it's in the format of date first, and then the time in hours, minutes and seconds. So the date format is in the American format. So you have the date first, the year first, and then the month, and then the day. It's 2015 / it's the 8th month, and it's the 6th day, and the time is 13:15, let's say 54 seconds. Do the same on R2. So let's copy that, and we'll say 13:16 and what, about 8 seconds. If I do the show system time, so now I've got GMT, we've got the correct date, we've got this correct time. Right, brilliant. You probably have noticed that you've got this little star at the front of the card. Now, if you see this, it means that the card that you're currently configuring, that the current configuration hasn't been saved since you last made a change. To save this, we will just, because we're already in admin mode here, we'll say save, and it will save the configuration. If you had managed to exit out of admin mode, then you would say admin save, and it will save the configuration, and you see that the star disappears. The current configuration has been saved. Alright, let's have a look at something else. Let's get out of admin mode, and they've got a file called a BOF file. So if I do file directory, you'll see that they have this BOF file here. Now this BOF file is a boot option file, and the boot option file, if we do a show BOF, we'll see that this is the image that we're running. This is the startup configuration that it will use. It show you the mode, so it's full duplex 100, and they're using a console speed of 1152. First things first, I'll probably try and change that config speed. To change anything on the boot option file, we just type BOF. This gets us into BOF mode. Then I'll change the console speed to the more famous one, which is probably 9600. Show BOF. Yeah, so it's changed it to 9600. I'll do the same on R2. BOF. Console speed 9600. And it hasn't saved. So if I say exit now and I do an admin save, you notice that the star is still here. We also need to do a BOF save. The star has disappeared. So you've got two kinds of save. You've got the boot option file save, and you've also got the admin save. Just have a quick look at what router that we're running. If we do a show chassis, we're on a 7750 SR12. Do the same over here. BOF save. Oh, let me exit. Let me just say save because I'm already in BOF mode. Brilliant, and the star has disappeared. What I'm going to also do is I'm going to change where the default config is loaded from. We can see that the default config is on CF3. CF is compact flash. On these systems, on each processor, there's like an Ethernet port for the management, and there's also space for 3 compact flashes. So CF1, CF2 and CF3. And CF3 is where the boot option file, the BOF for the local device is kept. The BOF specifies where the system searches for like its images, as I said, and its config files. Now if we wanted to change the location, if I exit out of this, I do a file directory, and I wanted to change that location. So if I say BOF, then I say primary config, and I say CF3, and let's make one called master config .cfg. Gives me a warning here saying that a valid config file does not exist at CF3. Now this isn't a problem, because what we're going to do, we're going to create that config, but first we have to point the BOF towards it. So if I now say show BOF, you can see that the primary config that it's going to be looking for is master config. Let's save the BOF and let's exit out. Then we do file, attribute to create it, CF3. Let's just copy and paste from here. Master config. It said it's not saved. Why is that not saving now? So I need to do an admin save as well. So you do a BOF save and an admin save. Now the file can be created. If I do file directory, I now see that the master config is here. And if I do a show BOF, it's going to load its configuration from the BOF. Now, how do we actually see what that master file is saying? If I do a file type, and copy and paste, I'll be able to read in plain text what's in the master file. So when it loads, it will load my name of R1, and I don't think we've really changed anything else, but if we had changed anything else, this is what it would load. There's no harm in doing an admin save again. If I try to actually create this file on R2, it shouldn't allow me to create it. Master config.cfg. It's not found. If I do an admin save, now I try and create it, it's still not found. And why is that? Because you need to reference it in the BOF. So to get around this, I'll say BOF, I'll say show BOF, primary config, copy well, not copy, cf3 colon master config. It's fine. We save the buff. We come out. We admin save. And now we should be able to create the file. File attribute. CF3. And it's saved. That's fine. This is how we get the file. Now if we also say show buff, we can see that we've changed the console speed, and when it loads up, it's going to use the CF3 master config file. Let's go on to some system security. We didn't want, if you want to really secure this system, you don't want everybody using like your root password or your admin file. So individual users can be configured for accessing each device by determining a separate login name and password for each user. The first thing what we're going to do, we're going to create a user. On R1, if we say configure system security, enter, let's do an info, let's see what's already configured. We have no users configured at the moment. We say configure system security and user, we call him student1. He's got a password of password, but P, capital P for SSWORD. That is his password. And you see that we've also now gotten a little star. If we, like in Cisco, when you use, if you're not in the correct hierarchy, if we say here admin save, it doesn't save it. So on Cisco you would do a do, and on Juniper you would use a run. But on Alcatel you use a slash. So you say backslash admin save, and it saves from here. If we now say info, we can see that we've got a user, a student, and they've encrypted the password, but that is there. Now, if we try and the star has disappeared. If we log out and try and log in with that student with the correct password, we see that we're not able to log in. And why is that? So let's get back in with admin and do a bit of troubleshooting as to why we are not allowed to log in. The reason why we're not allowed to log in is if we do a show system security, no, not a show system security. If we do configure, is it show system security, I think it's user detail, and we could compare the admin user with the student one. So we see that student one has is it got to be requested for a new password? No. Has he got console access? No. Whereas admin has console access. Let's rectify that. So we say configure, and we could use the hierarchy, configure system security user access, no, user student one access console info, and we can now see that the access console is there. Let's save that, admin save. So this is step 2. Let's log out and see if we can log back in with that user. So student one with his secure password, he's now able to log in. If we have a look under the config, show system security user detail, we're now not allowed to issue. The first issue was that we couldn't log into the system. We rectified that by using the access console. Now we can access the console, but we can't issue any commands. If we try configure commands, configure system security, we're not allowed to use this. So this is another thing. So we go back to, we have to log out again, log back in as admin, and do a show system security user detail. If you just use user, you'll see the differences between the two users. But if you use the detail, you see everything. We're going to compare what student 1, so here's student 1's profile, no new password, restricted to home, and he's under a default profile. Whereas you see with the admin, he's under an administrative profile, and that's the difference. What we need to do is configure system security user student. If you just do S, so if we do a question mark here, no, it's not showing the users. If I just say ST and I tab, it will configure the student. Student 1 access. No, I don't think it's access. So student 1 here, console, member, administrative. Let's save that. And let's have a look again now. Show system security user detail. We can now see that student 1's profile is also administrative. He's on the default and administrative. He should have all the same access permissions as the admin. We've saved the profile. We can log out, log in as student 1, put the password, show system security user detail. Brilliant. We now have all the same rights as the admin. Let's do the same thing on R2. The first step was configure a security profile. Configure system security user student 2 with a password of password. And then we say access console, and then student 2 will have console member administrative admin same. If we log out of R2, log back in as student 2 with the password, we're in. And if we do show system security user detail, we have all the access rights. This is how to configure up a user profile on Alcatel. We can also, rather than having to go through all of that again, if we say we wanted student 3 on R2, we could copy the student profile. If we now said we wanted student 3 on R2, so we would say configure system security, copy user student 2 to student 3. When we save this, admin save. Now if we try and log out, before I do that, configure system security, let's see an info. We see that student 3 has been copied, but there's one thing that isn't copied, and that's the actual password. So when we log into the system, we'll have to give a new password. What we do, so if we now log out, we type in student 3, and we just press enter here. You don't add the password. If you try and add the password, it won't log you in. So if I do the password, P4SSWORD, it logs us back out. So what you need to do is you say student 3, password, just press enter, and you're going to be asked to enter a new password. The current password is nothing, so we press enter again, and the new password, we add our new password. I will use P4SSW, not a 0 this time, just ORD, and it asks us to re-enter it, P4SSWORD, and we have the same rights, so show system security user detail. Brilliant. We have student, if I scroll up a bit, we have student 2 and student 3. No need to do any password bits here. And if we do configure system security and type in info, now we see that student 3, the password, the new password at login has disappeared and it has its password there. A new student has been created. You can have a default profile and you could just copy all of those default profiles to any future profiles, which is quite handy if you're doing lots of profiles. You could just clone a current profile. The next part we're going to get to is log out and rebooting. We've already seen that how we log out, but how would you actually reboot a system or save? We know how to save, so to save we use admin save, which saves the configuration. To log out to the logout prompt, we use logout. What happens if we add some kind of messed up config and we want to go back to a current configuration or a known good configuration? So what we could do, there's two ways we could do it. Or say if we, let's log back into this, student 2 with our nice password. Look at the file directory. We see all of these files here, mastercard, master config, and they add each one. We could go to one of these master configs, but if any of these are wrong, we could delete it and start again from the config. So we could say file, delete, then you would say cf3, and you could delete a config. So say let's just choose one of these, master config 1. These are each created every time you admin save. We could delete it and it says yes. When we do the file directory, we see that config 1 has gone. If that was the wrong one, and then we could reboot it. So we could just, if you want to reboot, you need to be in admin mode, so admin reboot. But that's not what we want to do. What we're going to do, we're going to configure a rollback. The rollback feature allows us to undo a configuration and go back to a previous working configuration. There's no actual default rollback location. One must be created. You've got to create one. And the way to do that is we're already in admin mode. So we say rollback, and then we can say rollback, tab. Let's just make a comment for this. Save, comment, and then we can say, let's put it in brackets, first rollback. And there you see that it's saying the rollback file has not been created. So we need to create the rollback file. So to create the rollback file, I would say configure system rollback location, and let's call it something nice. This will be the in CF3, we'll put it in nice big capitals. Rollback is here. You see no checkpoints currently exist at the rollback location. Now what we would do, we do what we've done before, the admin, and then say, let's say save comment, let's change that name a bit, second rollback. Oh, I need to put rollback probably, rollback. Save comment, and now it's saved here. So if I exit out of this and I do a file directory, and we see that the rollback file is here. So if I admin save this, and let's do something. So let's say configure system name messed up. We've messed up the configuration, we've saved it, admin save. We find out that this is not what we want. We want to roll back to the latest rollback. So what I would do is admin rollback, and I'll say revert. Now if I question mark after this, you can see you could go back to the latest rollback, or you could go to a checkpoint ID. As I only have one, I'm going to say the latest latest rollback. And when I type this, this should revert back to saying R2. It's gone back to R2, which is what we want. We admin save, and all the configurations gone back. So this is how we use the rollback command. But first we need to create a rollback configuration, then we save the location, and then we have certain checkpoints where we can roll back to a good known file. And you'll see that the difference here is that all the other files are configuration files, whereas this has an RB at the end, which is a rollback file. That's how we know the difference between the configurations. So that's it for system configuration. We could move a bit on, but I think the other thing, did I set the date and time? Show system time. Yeah, the date and time has been set. We managed to change the name. We've configured. We know how to see a file by using the file type. We know how to delete a file, file delete. We know how to create a file by using the file attribute. We've looked at the BOF, the boot option files, how to change the default configuration file, how to change the console speed, set the date and time. For the first section, the first foray into Alcatel, I think this is it. On the next video, we're going to look at provisioning ports, setting up some IP addresses, some loopbacks, and also setting up some static routes to be able to get to those. I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for listening.